Hi again. Welcome back to the Know Your Game podcast. This is Chuck with US Indoor, your friendly neighborhood membership director. And today I have a very special guest. Today is Gary Archer from Let's Play Sports. If you've known me for any length of time, you know, if we had any conversation, you think that, or you know that I think that leadership is the key. This is the way. It's absolutely what's going to make a difference in your life and your business. And today I get to talk to the person who got that bug in my butt, and I'm very thankful for it. Gary Archer, president of Let's Play Sports and a dear friend. So great to have you. Could you tell everybody that doesn't know you a little bit about you and your story?
Yeah, no, Chuck, super appreciate the introduction, and maybe except for the bug in the butt part, I don't know about that, but anyway, but hey, I'll do yeah, real quick, just kind of summary of my journey in this kind of industry in a way. Just my dad opened up an indoor soccer facility in 1987, right? He was one of those dreamers that thought, you know, this is something that he could do as a business. I think I was like 14 years old, maybe back then, maybe 14, 15, somewhere in there. Tom Higginson is another key factor in this story. My dad's was great at sales, great at generating, you know, interest and getting people to give him money to help and that kind of thing, but not the best manager. So as far as like us managing the business really well, that wasn't something that was done very well. And I can honestly remember, you know, sitting around the house in a family meeting discussing, you know, things like bankruptcy, these types of words being thrown around. And then Tom Higginson found our facility in 1991 while he was driving around. And we merged with him because he just said, I'll take 50% of your company, and I'll teach you guys how to run this facility and make money, and we'll buy the property. All these things that he kind of committed to as promises, he kept all those promises. And we made money, and my dad retired in 1994. So Tom came around in 91. My dad retired in 1994. Clearly a lot of loyalty I have towards Tom Higginson, as far as like, you know, I could kind of see him as somebody who saved my family from maybe bankruptcy. That wouldn't be a stretch to say that. As far as the industry itself, you know, I've done every job from sweeping the floors all the way up to what I get to do today, which is lead this company. But and all of that is really because of Tom, our founder, that he just provided lots of opportunities over the years. So, you know, and simply put, right, like I think the thing that I remember most too on that was I had taken a stint off like in 1994 where my dad was, he was sick, and so he had to move out of the country and was in Costa Rica, and I decided I wanted to be around my dad. And when that ended, he ended up, you know, surviving that scare. I called Tom and he said, oh, absolutely. I'll take you back in a heartbeat, and I'll give you a choice where you want to go. Wichita, Kansas, Permian Basin, Texas, or Houston, Texas. Pretty easy decision, taking Houston. And I opened that facility, and then Tom and I expanded, and he just continued giving me roles that are probably were a stretch for me, right? They were always a stretch for me. They stretched my ability to lead. Every single thing along the way was just like that. And part of me thinks he knew what he was doing, and part of me thinks he was just crazy, and part of me thinks that, you know, he was desperate. Some combination of that, and
Yeah,
and that's kind of where we are, right? That's kind of where we are.
yeah. And so now, fast forward for everybody that doesn't know Let's Play Sports, one of the largest operators of indoor soccer in the U.S. You've got how many facilities and fields now, and in how many cities, Gary?
I would say we're like 45 total fields, right? We think
Okay.
about how you generate revenue. That's the way to go. But as far as physical, actual locations where those fields house, 20 locations now. So just, you know, so we did a little bit of contracting, sold some stuff this real recently.
So and how many team members, you know, across all your locations, all your upper management support staff? How many people on your team total?
Yeah, it's actually that's interesting that you asked that. I literally just had to come up with these numbers for another survey we're doing with like Great Place to Work, and so so I actually have the exact number, believe it or not, which is shocking. We have 263 people total.
Okay.
200 of those, I think, like anybody else in this industry, are part-time, and 63 of those are full-time.
Okay, 63. Did you ever think, you know, in 1994 you'd be leading an organization
No,
with 200?
no, yeah, no. I was a kid in 1994, and yeah, just trying to get by, right? So
Yeah,
absolutely,
great.
no way I thought that would be the case.
All right.
And I was pretty introverted back then too.
Well, not anymore.
Yeah,
No,
no
no.
doubt.
All right, Seth, I wanted to give everybody some context for where you're coming from, and notably where I came from, because I had the privilege of working with you in the Let's Play team for 9 years of my career, and I think I was in the same place in 2009 that you were in 1994. Just got an opportunity. Lee, your vice president, likes to say I was his fourth choice. He likes to make sure that I remember that all the
Funny.
time. And but I got an opportunity, knew it was something special. And I think what really, of all the things from Let's Play that I learned that I continue to use today, the biggest one is when you in the executive team made the decision to really invest in the leadership development of your upper management team and of your facility management team. So I wanted to, it was just very impactful, and still is for me. And I know it is for my colleagues, that many of whom are still there at Let's Play. Can you tell us about like how you got to that place and
Yeah,
brought it
yeah.
to the executive team and said, nope, this is where because money wasn't abundant, right? Like, so,
No.
so when you said we're going to divert resources towards this, how did you come to that?
Yeah, no, that's really good question, Chuck. It's like it evolved, over the years. So I first had to kind of, like what you said, I kind of had to be infected with the idea of sorts, and then I had to figure out how to transition that. So when I first started, man, I was just a huge believer in systems, right? I was, Deming all the way, right? Like, let's get some systems, let's get some efficiency, let's make sure they're simplified. McDonald's is amazing. Let's hire the least qualified person and make the system so good, that overcompensates for that. I wasted a lot of time thinking that was the way, right? Until I was willing to admit that you actually probably need really, really good people and really good systems. You do need both. But my favorite story Tom told me, so he infected me with this a little bit too, was he believed indoor soccer is something he just lived and loved. And by all means, the San Diego Sockers are probably the most successful pro indoor soccer team that's ever existed. And, Tom was there during their heyday of 10 championships, and just, they're amazing. And he just said it was two things. It was the system and the players. And he says, there are days when the players were off and the system carried them to a win. And there are days where, the system just wasn't clicking, but the players' talent carried them to a win. And so that was kind of one of the first things that I realized. It's both, right? It's both, where I believed it was just the one for a while. But then I really started to see it's really more the talent and the person side than it actually is the system. The system really does matter. I'm not going to take away from it. There's a lot of great systems that people play in soccer, but you can't, I think the saying that we used was, you can hire somebody and have bad training and they're still going to be great, right? If you hire a great person and they receive not really good onboarding and not really good training, they're still going to be pretty good and pretty good at their job. Could they be better? Yeah, training could have made them better. But you're never going to hire somebody bad and use really great training and make that person good. It's just, the person matters so much. And so, a system that is about training a good person, can overcome bad training, but you can never overcome a bad person with good training. So, but to answer the final part of the question is the people component. The idea that we got infected with was this concept of people first, right? People first is where this all began, and that really is that does harken back to a simple thing that just comes directly out of the Bible, right? Treat others as the way you want to be treated, and that's what I became a believer in 2002 or something, and that was a huge part of it. Relationships and those kinds of things became so primary, and so that was such an important component for me. The relationships in the organization and those things. I went to the board and I said, guys, here's the equation, right? If we put our people first, then and we can lead in that way, then they're going to put their customers first, and we're going to win. That's kind of how it works. And I mean, you and I kind of further developed that a bit. If you can remember better leaders, hire better people who provide better service, drive better performance. Remember that? And so you can just simplify that equation. You and I kind of created that equation. Then we just went, actually, if you just simplify that equation, it's better leaders equal better performance. That's the equation. So so that was something you and I further developed into some training and other things over the years. But as far as the basis of getting it all started, it really just started with let's focus on being a people first organization, right? And
As you made this decision, you got the board, on board, right? And then things started to change. So how did the leadership development approach, the people first approach, change your business and change you as a leader?
Oh yeah. Well, I would say this, as far as changing me, personally, right? That's more about, I was changed, right, once I became a believer. So that whole concept of, lead because of the people, be others focused. That just was Christianity to me defined,
Okay.
right? Like, so it's just that, right? So that kind of was what infected me. And I was kind of at a crossroads, right, when I became a believer, because that's not how the organization was. And so I was thinking about leaving, but I really felt called to, like, no, you can have an organization that puts people first and is other focused, and do that here. As far as, so my life was kind of changed, and relationships became such a component of my life. It was, I tell my kids all the time, it's like, if we can suspend belief in God just for a second, right? I know there's not everybody believes in God, and I'm aware of that. But I think if we could suspend that belief for just a second, just let's assume there is a heaven, right? And you think about, what do I get to take with me when I get to go to heaven? It's like, my only answer that I have ever been able to come up with are the relationships that we have, right? So if we have a relationship, I think you can have a relationship on the other side, if there were, whatever that looks like. And so I can't think of anything else, my car, my house, anything else. I really can't think of it. So I always tell my kids, relationships, they're the currency of heaven, is what I tell my children. So so you just translate that forward, right? You can see if that's the excitement that I have. You put that into the organization. It's literally, there was a book that I read that was, people first, customer second, and it just, that was somebody that transformed, that book kind of transformed how the approach was that we took. And so, because all the time you say customers right, customer first, that kind of thing. Well, yeah, no, the customer will get served, but if you put your people first, it makes a big difference, right? So
Yeah,
I
Richard
don't know if that
Branson.
fully answered the question. But
No, I
yeah.
think it did. Yeah, Richard Branson is famous for saying that too. No, it's not customers first. It's your employees first, and they'll take care of your customers. So, how would you describe, if you were at a shareholder meeting and they're going, Gary, how would you rate the return on that investment that you spend every year? What's that look like for you?
Yeah, no, that's good. Oh, I mean, embracing that idea really kind of makes you look at investments differently.
Yeah.
So investment decisions are different when you have that, when that becomes your primary idea, right? You start believing that people say people are assets all the time, but that's not how they act. And so, but when you really act it out, then you start investing in things that actually do make your people better. And so it also makes you prioritize, like, your hiring, right? So understanding that where you hire and how you hire is the single greatest thing that you do to impact the future of your organization. And so then you invest in a process, you get heavily involved in that process of selecting that talent, right? But 10-year impact, I don't know, I'd say it can be seen in the efficiencies. So the result of a good manager are not just like mathematically like 1 + 1 better, it's multiple better. So a good manager is multiple times better than even an average manager. A bad manager, everybody knows, is terrible, but a good manager is a multiple better than a bad manager. So I would say, if you wanted me to put numbers to it, I mean, I looked at this before I came in today. 10 years ago, we had 24 locations. I told you we had 20 locations now. I had 24 locations 10 years ago. I mean, and adjusting for inflation, right? We currently only have 20, but our revenues are over 22% higher, adjusted for inflation, right? So keep that in mind,
sure,
right?
yeah.
So with fewer locations, right? So you can do the simple math, right? We kind of discovered that one good person at, say, $20 an hour can do the work of, say, three just average, not bad, average people that I'm paying 15, right? Like, I think that math wins for me every day of the week. So, and you can also look at the retention rate. You mentioned, you worked for us for 9 years, and that is actually the average tenure of one of our managers, right? So we have turnover, but like everyone else, but retention of the people is what you really want to focus on. Don't focus on the thing you don't want, focus on the thing you want, which is retention. And ours is usually really high.
So it does make, really, it makes a difference that you guys could say, like, yes, our work day is 3 or 4 p.m. to midnight, but I keep people for an average of 9 years. Like, that's impressive.
Right.
Like that is.
So, if I was going to say, one of the things, we agree, we struggle the same way everybody else does, as far as people have those life events and the typical two that we see, right? If I'm getting married or I'm getting ready to have a baby, these two life are the things that usually where we see our best people. Like I'm not talking about the people you should have fired and you kept around.
Sure.
Okay,
Yeah.
we
Right,
all
right,
have some of
right.
those, but but the best people that you're like, man, you're sick to your stomach when they come and resign. We talk about those. Those people in those transition moments, we have a new process now where we go to them, and we just had quite a few recently, where we go to them and we ask them questions. We want to be involved in their decision-making process around this. And so we say, we ask them things like, hey, what needs to change in your work life, right? Like, what do we need to work on to change in your work life so you can be the husband that you want to be, the best, significantly different than being a man when it comes to taking care of the kids sometimes, especially if very small things in the job that really aren't that hard for us to accommodate in order for this person to stick around. And just having the conversation is really kind of the starting point. So, and then be willing to do that. Right?
Yeah. Be
Get that
willing
done.
to. Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
yeah.
So,
What's the cost of losing people that are that good with all that knowledge and ability and all those things, and then training a new person and the time the customers that you lose in the meantime? I mean, really, a day at home, ability to work from home. Yeah, it's worth
awesome.
it.
So you would say, I can gather from the fire in your voice, like this was a pivot moment in the history of Let's Play. Like there was Let's Play before this approach, before you really or took on the mantle of being people first, right? And then there's Let's Play after that. And so, knowing what I know about the early years of Let's Play, sleeping on turfs and that kind of stuff, and to where you are now, making 22% more revenue on fewer locations with with long tenure for people that are with you. Is this one of the most pivotal things that has happened in the history of Let's Play? Is this shift?
Yeah. Well, here's the other thing too. Like in any leadership situation, right? The quality of the leader is really usually defined by how far out they think, right? Like stretch that. Like if you just want to make somebody a better leader and they're thinking on a day-to-day basis, get them to think on a weekly basis, right? Get the weekly person to think on a monthly basis, get the monthly person to think on a yearly. But how about thinking about annually, 10 years, these kinds of things that challenges kind of your leadership. And so the ultimate one, right? I'm always going to go back to this, Chuck, and is the eternal perspective, right? Like think about the eternal perspective. So the differences that we make, in say your life, right? Like about Will, right? Like so that we lost Will, and but his life was significantly changed for the better because of the time that he got to spend with us. I don't even know how to put a dollar figure on that, right?
How could you? Yeah.
That's something to wake up for every day and just get to be part of that. And man, dude,
And he made a big difference for Let's Play too. That went both ways. He was pivotal as well. Yeah.
So it's like we're investing those kinds of things. You know what I mean? Your morale, your retention, you can put numbers to all of this stuff, but I guess that's, when you start measuring things, right? Sometimes you have the tendency to measure the wrong thing and then the focus starts turning. So it's like, but I think for me personally, there's an eternal perspective that I think is more valuable than anything else. If you work for my goal for anybody that works in Let's Play, it's like 1 or 2 or 3, we temporary workers that work over the winter or the summer. I want that to be different for them too, so that then they have a higher expectation for their next job, right? So if I can even just do that, which is, hey, I experience good leadership and that's what I expect moving forward, or I'm going to go find someplace else to work, then that's good. That's a
great.
Really good thing, right?
It's great.
Yeah, I think that's a great thing.
Yeah. So I won't ask you about, the strategic leadership investments that you make for Let's Play, but I'm curious, what do you do? Like, what does Gary, do for your leadership development to help you get better as a leader?
Oh, yeah. That's a great question. You know what? These are so timely, these questions. I literally, we do onboarding now that's, for our people and our new people, and they interview and they have some questions that they ask me. I already know I know that the questions are going to be like an ask, but one of them is what are the 1 or 2 like tips that you have for me as a new person coming in? And I tell them 2 things. Well, but the one that I think is relevant in this is, to answer your question, is understanding what type of learner that you are. You have to understand that. And so it took me forever until I read, Peter Drucker's Effective Executive, that I learned that I was not a reader, I was a listener. That's the type of learner that I am. And so before I used to read like maybe 2, maybe 3 books at a stretch, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
In a year as far as acquiring knowledge. But once that unlocked the idea that, oh, I learned by auditory, I learned by listening, man, I probably read 52 plus books a year, every year. You know what I mean? So that's it. Mostly a lot of the books, you know what I mean? I do like physical training. You know what I mean? We're doing getting things done inside the company now. You know, we've certified somebody to be that trainer. We have somebody certified in crucial conversations. So I like group training as well. Those are kind of, I just like to interact with people. But to me, you know, concepts and connecting things, you gotta, somebody told me a long time ago, readers are leaders. And so I always felt guilty because I wasn't a reader, but listening is the same thing, right? So learners are leaders, I guess is the best way to say that.
Yeah, I think
that
are you still doing things like C12 for yourself and that kind of
Oh
stuff?
yeah, that's a fair statement. You're right. Like, so yeah. So I'm glad you brought that up. Yeah, so C12 is such a huge component of mine. And that's just for those people that don't know what C12 is, you can Google it, but I'll just give you a quick explanation. That's just other Christian business owners and CEOs sitting in kind of a roundtable environment that, you know, there's a session like once a month where we spend an entire day, and there's content that we review, and then we give each other, you know, there's opportunities for advice and those kinds of things. So other people in other industries that are leaders that can speak into your business that don't have any skin in the game. So it's a great way of not being isolated as you move upward. I think that's always the problem. I think, you know what I mean, when you're the head of the organization, who do you talk to? Even your wife, right? It's, you know, it's kind of hard. You can't freak her out. And so you become fewer and fewer people that you can say, man, I'm really scared we're going to make payroll this month. Like, you can't really say that to anybody, but you can in this environment. So yeah, that's really good. That's kind of iron sharpens iron. They're saying is making greater businesses for a greater purpose is kind of that concept there. And then, yeah, we still do, I think you were participated in this as well. We do the executive leadership coaching. We've got a new coach now. Erin is her name. She does a great job. 2 and 5, I think, is her coaching company. But yeah, she's coaching, you know, it's a lot of the soft skills. Where's the gaps in somebody's development that needs to get them to the next level, and she can coach. And you're familiar with coaching, so you know how it works. So we do a lot of executive coaching. And then always, right, Global Leadership Summit, huge home run, right? I think you're still a fan.
Yep, I haven't missed a single time, man. Yep.
Yeah, me neither. Yeah, big believer in taking everybody to Global Leadership Summit every year. That kind of format is always really, really, really good for learning, and people get. I never know what people are going to walk away from with that.
Yeah, you never know.
Good thing.
All right, so put a pin in it, right? So there are plenty of people that out there that be listening, maybe didn't even get to this point in the podcast, and they scoff at this. You're like,
sure.
I don't have that kind of resources, or I'd rather put them towards this, that, and the other thing. And what would you say to those people that are just like, no, this is hogwash?
Yeah, so that's actually a great question too, Chuck. And I would say, I'm going to assume that the listenership here are other people that own indoor soccer facilities.
Mostly, yeah. Or want to, yeah.
Right. Okay, then my answer is please let me know who you are and where you're located, because I would love to come to your market and compete against you directly, right? I would love to do that. I give my people opportunities to develop, advance in their careers, even to become owners in this organization. You know what I mean? There's lots and lots of things versus, I don't know, are you doing that, right? So of the 20 markets that we're in, we're number 1 in every market except 4, right? And that's usually because we just haven't found the right person to run that facility yet in most cases. Now, look, I don't want to come off sounding cocky. I have a tendency to do that. But I will say this, there are amazing owner-operator facilities around the country, and I can name names, that I would never go to their markets, right? Like, I would never go to their markets. They're just so good at what they do. But we have the same thing in common, is they believe in leadership too. So it's like, I'm not going to go compete against them.
There you go.
So much.
Never know. Gary, this was awesome. It's been far too long since I gotten to talk to you. So we used to do this like every other week. So we used to jive.
Yeah, no.
And so it's really great. Thank you for sharing your knowledge and experience with us. And if you guys have any comments, drop them below. If you have any questions for US Indoor, for Gary, send them over my way. We're happy to get those answered for you. Either way, thank you for listening to another episode of Know Your Game Podcast. We'll see you in St. Petersburg the first week of May in 2024. Definitely come to that one. We'll talk to you, everybody, the next time. Thank you, guys. Thank you, Gary.